And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the Top Dog Talk podcast. I'm your host, Reno, back alongside me, Dan Kiley. Episode, I think, 119 of the Top Dog Talk podcast. Guys, Georgia football season in general. This is the last month without any football on our televisions. I am excited, to say the least. Hit a little bit of a burnout. There was that stretch in the offseason where I just didn't really want to talk about football because it, to be honest with you, felt so far away. But hey, we're over that. We're over the hump now. We are back in the season. It feels like the season again. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm ready to go. We've taken so much time off, but now we're back. Football is right around the corner. At least it feels like it's right around the corner. Still quite a bit away, but a lot closer than it was before. This is just the worst time of the year when we're just waiting on college football to come back.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like I'm always waiting for SEC Media Days and Conference Media Days to hit. Then it really starts to feel like it's back. And even then, you still got to wait like another month for it to come back in terms of having games and all that. So, Dan, let's get right into it. We have two football-centric hot topics. Dan didn't give us a softball this week. He usually doesn't give us a softball, but I don't really know if there's an easy answer in this one. Dan, question number one. When you looked at your team's schedule, what gets you more excited? A great home game or a great road game?
I think this one's fairly easy. I mean, you said it's not a softball, but I really feel like this is kind of easy. I mean, if you've grown up a fan of a team, or if you've been a fan of a team for a very, very long time, chances are you've been to a ton of home games. So, and this is kind of something I said on another show, not recently, where it's like the luster or the allure of going to Sanford Stadium is kind of worn off on me because I've been there so many times. So I'm always looking for that great road game, that, an opportunity for me to go somewhere I've never been before. Obviously the pinnacle was going to Notre Dame to play Notre Dame at Notre Dame. That was, I mean, to me, it doesn't really get bigger than that. Never probably will. Going to Austin is pretty cool. And I'm not going to be going to Austin. I know a lot of other people are, but like Georgia had one. I don't know if it's still scheduled, but they had one with Ohio State. Is that still on the schedule at the Horseshoe?
I want to say it is. As far as I know, yes.
That one is a big deal to me. Like, I want to go there. If Georgia ever went to Michigan to play in the Big House, that one would be a big deal to me. A place that you want to go to see, historic stadium. So for me, it's fairly simple. I'm always looking for that iconic road trip or that opportunity to go see a place that I've never seen before. So that's me.
I'll level with you here. I don't know as a fan if I get any more nervous about a game than when you're going on the road, especially for a ranked team. That's pretty nerve-wracking. Like when Georgia travels to Alabama this year, that's going to be nerve-wracking for a lot of people. Not only because it's Alabama, but because you're going on the road, you're going to Bryant-Denny Stadium, you're having to knock off, Alabama. It's still Alabama, even though it's not Nick Saban, which I think probably does loosen some of the fears for some people. It's like, oh, Saban's not there, not as worried anymore. But still, there's still that same talent. Saban recruited almost all of those players. I think there's really only maybe 2 or 3 people or players that maybe Kalen DeBoer actually recruited, one of them being the transfer quarterback they got this offseason. So that's it for me in terms of what kind of gets me more excited. Going into number 2, real quick, as we lost Dan for a moment, I'll just go straight into it. Number 2, should it be mandatory for the NFL? There he is. Okay, we'll change it back up. We'll go at number 2. Dan, should it be mandatory, like for the NFL, for every team to wear an alternate uniform at least one time per season?
All right. So again, this is another one of those where I'm going to say absolutely. Now, listen, we know the NFL, the reason that they mandate alternate uniforms is so they can sell more jerseys, sell more uniforms, sell all those types of different things. For me, I think it's cool. And like the NFL is twice, I believe it's twice at home. You have to wear the alternate uniform. I think it would be cool if they did, just mandated just one time that you have to wear something alternate, just to kind of throw it, because I like those types of things, but I understand there is a large majority of the people who would vehemently disagree with that opinion. But my opinion would be, I think it would be awesome if everybody had to wear an alternate, because some people are extremely creative in what they come up with. Obviously, Oregon is notorious for all of their alternate uniforms, but go look across the board. There are some really badass alternate uniforms. Now, not a uniform I'd want to see my team wear every single week, but I do want to see them from time to time. That's just me.
Dan, you just prompted me for a potential blind draft topic, but I got to ask. All right. Powder blue uniforms, Ole Miss. What are the thoughts, real quick? Then I'll answer hot topic number
Oh,
2.
they're
What do you think?
they're awesome.
Top tier?
I mean, I wouldn't say they're number one, but yeah, they're up there. They're really awesome. Same with North Carolina's baby blues.
Hey, we'll file that one away. That could be a blind draft here in the next few weeks. We will definitely file that one away. Dan, here I am on this. Like you said, there are some really good alternate uniforms that I do love. But for me, it's like, I don't know. If it's mandatory, does it take away how special it feels? Like when Georgia wears the black uniforms, we don't wear them often, but when they do, it's special and you kind of enjoy it more. Then again, I haven't been to a game where Georgia's wear the black uniforms. I don't know about you, Dan. You maybe have. So I haven't felt that atmosphere there, but I don't know. I guess I wouldn't be opposed to the rule. I think Kirby would definitely be opposed to the rule for
Yes, you
sure.
would.
But yeah, hey, if they want to implement that, the NCAA wants to implement that, go ahead, go right ahead, because that would bring back the black uniforms, maybe a yearly blackout in Sanford Stadium, which would be absolutely amazing to see. Dan,
you know what I would,
yeah,
you know what I would rather see? I'd rather see the all whites, the white helmet, the white shirt, the white pants. I would rather see the icy whites than the black. I've seen the black enough. I'm not really all that jazzed by the black. I want the all white.
what do we think about they're all red helmet, red top, red pants?
I mean, I don't really like the red pants thing, but the black pants with the red and the red would be fine. But I want the all whites. I mean, I've been teased long enough. I want to see that on the field.
Hey, I don't know if we'll ever get it. I know who came out and said that those were just like recruiting things, but man, if they did, that would be the shock in Sanford if they came out in the all whites or wherever they were. I think would be a really big pop right there. Dan,
Yeah.
we have a great rant from you today. Dan, tell what are we angry, Dan? Are we happy? What's the mood over here?
I don't want to say I'm angry, Dan, today. I'm going to be very agitated / depressed, Dan, because here we are entering another Atlanta Hawks season. Okay. And they get the number 1 overall draft pick in a year that there's not really a number 1 overall draft pick, but you take the best guy that you could possibly get, which is Zachary Rizeche. I mean, I guess you could have taken Alexander Sarr. A lot of people really like that guy, but I'm okay with the Rizeche. Not a big deal. But then you take your second best player or your best player, depending on how you look at it. You could either traded Trey or you could have traded DeJounte. We trade DeJounte, and we don't get jack shit for him. Okay? We get Larry Nance Jr., who is not really anything significant. And then we get this Dyson Daniels or whatever the heck his name is, who's supposed to be an on-ball defender. But you neither one of those players – even combined, are at the level or the talent level of DeJounte Murray. So we have now given up a guy who is a 25-point game, 25-point a night guy who is an elite guard in this league, and we just given him up for just some scrap parts. You don't see this anywhere else. Nowhere in no other sport other than basketball do people trade for scrap parts or whatever. You don't see the NFL trading Adrian Peterson for a backup running back and a third string corner and a nickel back and a free safety who's I mean, you never see that in any other sport. It is the craziest thing in the world where you trade for all these little bench pieces and these little supplemented parts. And then you have a trade exemption from John Collins when you traded him. Okay, now John Collins, obviously a good player. Kevin Huerter, who we gave away for nothing. We gave away Kevin Huerter for nothing because we didn't want to pay the luxury tax, who is starting in Sacramento, by the way. He's not a scrub. So we're giving away starters. We're not getting anything back in return. And then we don't use the exemption to bring in a player because we don't want to pay the luxury tax. And it's Wrestler and his son, Little Nicky. They don't want to be he's letting his son run the damn team, which is an absolute horror. I'm horrified by that. So we've got that going on. But then this is the worst part, Harrison. And this is the part that really this is the depressed part of Dan. Okay. the worst place to be in any professional sport or any college sport or any sport in general. It's not at the top. It's not at the bottom. It's right in the middle, right? If you're at the top, you're at the top. But if you're at the bottom, you know where you're at. You know where you stand. You just time to tear it up, rebuild, whatever. The Hawks are in the middle. If you go through the Eastern Conference and you look at every single team, you can go 8-9 teams before you say the Hawks might be better than that team, right? So where are we at? We are right back where we started, which is right at that play-in game. And that is the absolute worst place to be. That is no man's land. That is the wasteland. That is Siberia. You do not want to be in the middle. And the Hawks are right in the middle. And guess what, guys? It gets even better because we don't have any damn picks. I mean, we just got 2 first-round picks back. The one for next year is going to be from the Lakers. Do you think that's going to be anywhere near the top? Absolutely freaking not. And then the pick after that is from I'm not really sure where the second pick. San Antonio. No.
I thought it was San Antonio.
No. We got both picks from New Orleans, but I don't remember where the second. Right. I don't remember where the second pick is from. Anyway, we have 2 picks and we have 2 first-round picks in the next 3 years. Oh, and by the way, just to throw some egg on your face, we traded 5. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We traded 5 second-round picks for Sadiq Bey, who was here for a year. And guess what we didn't do? We didn't re-sign him because we didn't want to go to the luxury cap. So now we have no draft capital. We have no players coming in. We didn't use our exemption. Ariza Shea might be great. He might end up being great. He's not going to be great the first year, but he might end up being great. We're finally kind of building around Trey, but we're going to be stuck right in the middle. So what is Trey going to want to do after this year? He's going to want out. But guess what, guys? We have no draft capital. We have no way to make ourselves better. And then our best players going to want out after this year. This is hell on earth being a Hawks fan right now. And that is my rant.
I was looking at, and we talked about this. Sorry for interrupting. I was looking at the salary cap calculator, and I was texting you about it. Blew up your phone about it. Dan was like, what is this kid going on about? And it took like 6 or 7 moves to get to a point where at least in like 2 or 3 years, the Hawks could have $37 million cap space, which is damn near enough to have max, space to get a max player. But we're talking 2 or 3 years down the road. The best I could do for y'all without blowing it all up was, I think, maybe 12 million under or maybe 4 million over. Like, that was the best I could possibly do without blowing it all up. And that's a bad situation to be in. Really bad situation to be in. It's like, to put it similar, to compare it to a baseball situation, it's like where the Mets were last year. The Mets had one of the highest payrolls in all of baseball last year, and they absolutely sucked. Just sucked. And they had to offload pretty much every single one of their best players. Everybody they acquired at that, whatever they did last offseason, gone by now. So, yeah, not a great situation to be in. Certainly a reason for pessimism, but hey, you could get lucky, that's the thing. The Hawks have to get lucky now, and they have to get lucky in terms of, hey, the guys they have on their roster turn into something. That's the only way I think that you get out of this, for sure. Dan, second to last segment of the night. Let's get back into football talk. SEC brethren, there's more of them now. Texas and Oklahoma. We've been talking about this for, I guess, 2 years now?
It feels like forever, but it really hasn't been that long.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, we've been talking, they're coming, and now they're finally here. And the biggest takeaway that I have from all of this, at least from social media, is you have 2 of the most arrogant fan bases now in the country, with the trophy cases of the last decade similar to Vanderbilt, and Texas and Tennessee going at it. That's my entertainment. Texas and Tennessee haven't really done crap in the last 10 years yet. They're going at it like they have. It's pretty funny. Second takeaway, Dan, at least via social media, Texas is coming in to run the place. And I'm talking about run the place so much that nobody's even mentioning Oklahoma. So, Dan, I want your take. Does Georgia have a new big threat when it comes to Georgia's potential dynasty?
I don't know that they necessarily have one immediately. However, when you talk brands and you talk about ability to raise money and you talk about fertile recruiting grounds, Texas is 100% a sleeping giant. And I'm not going to say they're 100% asleep, but Texas has not been Texas in quite a while. And that was one of the things that people said about Georgia for the longest time, specifically when we made the coaching change to Mark Richt, is that if Mark Richt could get it on track, that Georgia was a sleeping giant because it had everything you needed. It had a fan base that was excitable, that was willing to travel, all those types of things. They had the money. They had boosters that were willing to spend. They just hadn't been inspired to do so. They had the ability to add facilities. They had the media contract. They had everything. They had the stadium, the infrastructure, everything you needed. You just needed somebody to light the ignition. And they thought Mark Richt could do that, and he started to trend it in the right direction. And I give a lot of credit to Mark Richt for building up the Georgia program, because when he put it on a place to where Kirby could come in and take off with it, right? Kirby didn't have to rebuild anything. I mean, he built up, yes. And I'm not taking anything away from Kirby, so please don't say that. But Georgia was a sleeping giant. Texas very much in the same way. And now the one thing that you could use against Texas is that they're not in the SEC. They're in a bullcrap conference, and you want to play in the SEC. That doesn't fly anymore because now they're here. The only other team in the country that raises more money than Texas is Texas A&M. And we've seen Texas A&M spend. But by God, Texas can spend. They have a huge alumni. They have a huge fan base. They have extremely fertile recruiting grounds. I'm not saying that they're going to come in here and take over, but they could. They absolutely could. They have the ability to. And I do think that Georgia has to pay attention, because Texas is Texas, and Texas is a big damn deal.
We might be getting, because we have Alabama version of Dan last season. Alabama's back. We might get a Texas version of Dan saying Texas is back at some point on this program. I don't know. You might start working on that Southern accent of yours. Get that thing back fired up.
Texas has been back about 58 times if you ask them.
Dan, speaking of the new threat, and this is not a stat that's going to shock you, not going to shock anyone. Obviously, it's been kind of retweeted on my timeline over and over again. Kirby Smart has more first-round draft picks than he does losses, and it kind of blew my mind. Now, I am well aware, and you are too, about his record against Nick Saban. Nick Saban is the greatest coach of all time, if not for only just looking at his record versus Kirby Smart, who many say is now the best coach in college football, which it shouldn't even be a debate. I think he is. A third of Kirby Smart's losses were to Nick Saban. 94-62 overall, 9-2 in bowl games, 5-1 in the college football playoff, and 56-9 in SEC play. And I got folks on the timeline talking about Georgia's in trouble now because they have to play a hard schedule. And Dan, I sit here and I think, okay, yeah, Georgia hasn't had a regular season schedule. We're on the road for 3 of their top 10 ranked opponents. Yeah, that hasn't happened at Georgia. But has it happened anywhere else in the country? If so, somebody find it. I can't remember a time where somebody has gone on the road for each of their 3 matches versus top 10 ranked opponents.
Well, it does happen, but it doesn't happen to powerhouse teams. It happens to teams like Georgia Tech, right? Where Georgia Tech goes on the road and plays a bunch of different guys, but nobody cares, right? So nobody really pays attention to that. So it doesn't happen. I don't think it's fair to say it doesn't happen. It does happen. It doesn't happen to Alabama. It doesn't happen to typically. Well, Georgia's never really gotten the benefit of the scheduling breaks. Listen, we've had some schedules, like our home schedule just absolutely sucked, right? But it's like, we didn't get to miss a lot of these teams. So Georgia just never really has the best schedule. But at the end of the day, the way that I look at it now is you wanted to be the best. Right now, we are the best. Right? And I know last year was standing that we lost a game to Alabama and it came down, whatever, and we didn't play for national championship. I get it. That's fine. Play that game multiple times. I feel like we win it. Okay. That's just my opinion. Call me a homer, call me whatever you want to. But I feel like Georgia's the best program in the country right now. If you're the best program in the country, then go out and beat everybody. Okay. That's it. You want to be the best, beat the best. And that's the way I feel about it. Is it impossible? Hell no, it's not impossible. We've got the best damn roster. Look at the talent that we have. Look at the way that we recruit. I mean, if you're scared, get a dog. That's all. I mean, I don't know what to tell you because Alabama for 15 years or however long it was, they were the best team in the country. They didn't give a shit. Bring it. And their fans were the same way. They come on here like tell Powell, hey, Alabama's Alabama, and Alabama's going to be Alabama. Alabama's going to beat everybody's ass. Okay, that's what Alabama did, right? So if you want to be that, if you want to be the best, then tell people to bring it. Don't be scared. I mean, I welcome competition. I have in the back of my mind going through these past 2 seasons doing shows with you how often we were bored. We were bored. We didn't think anybody could beat us. It was boring.
Had great storylines and narratives for the most part.
Yeah, sure, fine, all that stuff. But like you never really felt threatened. I do this year. There's a bunch of games on there that I'm going to be excited for, but I'm not scared. And that's the way. I mean, that like to your point, Kirby's lost 5 games to Nick Saban. Take away those, and then take away the games that he lost his first year, and then you're talking about a handful of games. And I mean, he's not losing to Vanderbilt again. That's not happening. And I don't know who else he's lost to, but he's lost to
South
Auburn.
Carolina. Yeah, Auburn. Ole Miss in his first year. That was his first year, as you said. But I mean, yeah. Taking away 2016, Dan, you look at the losses they've had. They lost to an all-time 2019 LSU team. They lost to LSU in 2018. They lost to Alabama 5 times. And some of those Alabama teams were probably some of the best Saban teams. They lost to Texas in a bowl game in the Sugar Bowl, which is now Texas's version of their Super Bowl. If you go back on that timeline, anytime Georgia fans bring up Texas, you're damn sure in the comment section screenshot of that 2018 Sugar Bowl. I bet you anything. But yeah, as you said, usually Georgia's losses taking away 2016 are to some of the best teams in the country. All right, it's true. Bama was one of the best teams in the country last year. Sure, they weren't the Bama of the past. Still beat Georgia. Still beat a bunch of other folks. But I'm with you, Dan. If Georgia plays that game against Alabama 10 times, I'm sure probably Kirby ends up winning most of them. I'm not going to say he wins 9 of the 10, but he at least wins 5. I'll give Saban credit because he's a damn good greatest coach of all time. They probably split that thing 5-5 at the worst for both sides. So, hey, Dan.
I do have a question for you. Now that we've had plenty of time to digest it, and I'm not the tinfoil hat guy, okay?
Now you're a visor guy right now.
Right. So there was that conspiracy theory going around last year after the game that he knew that was going to be Nick's last year. And I'm not going to say he lost on purpose, but all right. So he figured with a loss, we'd both get in. Do you subscribe to that at all? Is there a 0.5% of a chance that even was floated out there? Like, hey, you know what? If we don't win this game, it's fine because we're both going to get in.
All right. So here's my take, and this is just my take. No, I don't know Kirby personally. I don't know Nick Saban personally. I just have a hard time, no matter what the circumstances is in the CFP, Kirby Smart doesn't come out there saying, I want to kick that guy's ass. There is a video of Nick Saban hyping up his team pregame speech before the 2017-18 national championship against Georgia. And he said, verbatim, he said, I don't want to see a smile on Kirby Smart's face after the game. That's what he said to his team. I just can't imagine Kirby saying anywhere to anyone, hey, let's let Nick win this game because it could be his last. I don't. But to your point, if he did think, hey, we could get in even with a loss, then, hey, maybe you do pull back the strings in terms of, I don't want to show this. I don't want to show that. We've seen that before from Georgia. We've seen it before, but it hasn't ever costed them in the last 2 years.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. That's the only realm in which I would say that was a possibility is if Georgia played vanilla because they thought they were going to have to play him twice.
Yeah.
But
I'm with you.
I don't know.
I see it. Dan, transitioning over from one quote-unquote big game to somebody who said that they will be everybody's biggest game. Quinn Ewers, Kombucha Cowboy quarterback, came out at the Manning Passage Camp, said, and I quote, we as in the University of Texas, we are going to be everybody's biggest game for sure. How does Dan Kiley feel about that?
Well, two things. One, what else is he supposed to say? And then two, there's always a thread of truth to a lot of that hyperbole stuff because Texas is the new kid on the block. Everybody wants to beat them the first chance they have to play them. I mean, if you think about most of these teams don't have a history with Texas. Most of them don't have the opportunity to play them. So it's the first opportunity to play them. They're a massive name. They're new to the conference. You don't want the new guy to come in and kick your ass. The only point of reference that I have where something like this has ever happened before, and you're going to be way too young to understand this, but Florida State, when they joined the ACC, I don't think they lost for like 3 years or 4 years.
Damn. Bowden?
I think it was like 30-something consecutive wins. Virginia is the one that snapped it. Tiki Barber at Virginia. Tiki and Rondé Barber was the team that snapped that winning streak. But nobody wants that shit to happen in the SEC, okay? They don't want Texas to come in and just run the table. So, I mean, again, what else is he supposed to say, right? You want your quarterback to be confident, all those other things. But then also, there is a bit of truth to that, not because they are the best team in the world, but it's their first shot. It's same with Oklahoma, by the way. All these SEC teams, they want to beat the shit out of Oklahoma that first time they see them. And I think that's more likely going to happen because I don't think Oklahoma is the program that Texas is right now. Oklahoma better, I know we haven't really talked about Oklahoma very much this offseason or whatever, but Oklahoma better figure it out really quick because they re-upped with Venables, and I'm not 100% sold that he's the guy. But when Oklahoma has it humming, they're obviously a really, really good program. I'm not going to disrespect Oklahoma, but they don't have it rolling right now. Texas does. So I mean, again, I kind of agree with Quinn. I do think for a lot of these SEC teams across the board, probably Georgia too. Yeah, they got that one scheduled or circled on the schedule. I believe that. I don't think that's crazy.
Can I ask? So obviously, yeah, Georgia goes on the road to Texas, and it is their new SEC brethren. And yes, the last time Kirby Smart faced this team, he lost. For sure. The last time he faced head-to-head with Steve Sarkisian, he lost. Granted, Steve was the OC for Alabama, and Kirby was the head coach at Georgia. But I guess, Dan, when you look at it, when you look at Georgia's schedule, they play at Bama, they play Florida, they play Auburn, they play Tennessee. In your eyes, is Texas a bigger game than those other games that Georgia plays against these long-established rivals?
I mean, Alabama's going to be the biggest game until it's not. Until Alabama proves they're not Alabama anymore, that's always going to be the biggest game for most Georgia fans. I would say for most Georgia players, they probably are going to have that reverence for Alabama because they know what Alabama is and what it's been. Texas doesn't really have that prestige, but I think there is going to be a segment. I mean, it's a tough question, right? But I think the Georgia players will be very excited to play Texas.
Absolutely.
I think they're probably going to be more excited to play them than anybody else because they haven't done it. Nobody on this roster has played Texas, but yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think they know Alabama's Alabama, and they're that's not going anywhere until it does. I mean, if that makes any sense.
There's a point to prove, very much a point to prove against Alabama this year. You're coming off a loss. We've seen what Georgia does coming off losses in the last 2 years. Really, the last 6 years. Really, Georgia coming off a loss is a different team, and that's my curious thing, Dan. Does that affect of hey, we fell short last year? Does that spur them on for 17 games or however many games they're playing now in college football, through including the championship? Does that spur them on? Because in the past they've had to create narratives about themselves.
Yeah, I think Georgia is in such a position of power. Jonathan Williams brought up a fantastic stat, and he shared it on his show. He shared it on his Twitter. It's Dr. J Will, if you want to follow him. It was I don't, forgive me, I'm probably going to get it wrong, but he completed like 70% of his passes, threw for like 2,500 yards, and I mean, it just these incredible stats. There's only been like 4 quarterbacks other than him since 2009 when they began tracking this. It was against SEC competition, and you'll have to go to Jonathan's to get the exact quotes. But my point was, Carson Beck did all of that as a first-time starter, and he did a great job of just illustrating of how in control and how in command of the offense he was as a first-time starter. And you would have to assume, barring any type of injury, that he's going to be better. And to be borderline historically great as a first-time starter, when you have an amazing talent at quarterback, you can beat anybody. And look at what Joe Burrow did at LSU. Now, granted, I'm not stupid. I understand that Joe Burrow had some of the best wide receivers we've ever seen in Jamar Chase and what's the other one?
Justin Jefferson.
Yeah. I mean, come on, that's pretty crazy.
And Thaddeus Moss, tight end. Thaddeus Moss was a demon back then.
Yeah, they had another receiver too. There's a third one. This is in the NFL now.
Was it Terrence Marshall?
No, he's like it's a bigger name than that. I don't know. It doesn't matter.
Continue, sir. Sorry.
Yeah. So my point is that Georgia has elite talent, and the crazy part is they're all getting better, right? It's like when we've had these historically good defenses come through, these players come through, you would think that that's it. That's the top. This is the mountaintop. It doesn't get better than this. The crazy part is those Georgia coaches and that environment and that culture that they've created, these kids are coming in and they're performing at such a high level, and they're getting better and better and better. Like, that goes back to my little mini rant a second ago about if you're scared by a dog, I don't feel threatened, because that coaching staff has done such an amazing job of procuring the talent and then developing the talent. Even Brock Bowers, Jeremiah.
Inside joke. If you know, you know. Dan, I looked this up because I saw the tweet or the quote. You spoke about Carson Beck and these big games, how Alabama, obviously just like Texas will be circled. Beck said this just recently, talking about the loss to Alabama, and I quote, "Well, I can speak for myself. Obviously, I mean, it eats me alive, but it is what it is. Obviously, a big loss like that in such a big game, I mean, you're going to think about it, but every season is separate of himself. QB1 is being eaten alive by that game." And that was Carson's worst game of the year by far.
By far.
And crazy thing is, he didn't throw a pick to let you know that by the box score. You just watched it. He made a couple bad decisions, put the ball in some areas where he shouldn't have, had probably two should have been interceptions. Just kind of got lucky in that sense. But, going back, he was, in my opinion, one of the top quarterbacks in college football last year, considering the circumstances he was going into as a first-year starter, coming in after probably Georgia's greatest, winningest quarterback of all time in Stetson Bennett. I won't say greatest in the sense of, hey, the most talented, but Stetson Bennett's the winningest Georgia quarterback ever, for sure. And Carson is the one responsible for following him. I'm really curious, Dan, and this is my big fear when we talk about Georgia heading into the season. It feels like every year the talk around Georgia's receiving core is this is the greatest it's been. And for the last 2 years, you haven't been able to see that because you have Brock Bowers. And that's, hey, understood. Feed the guy at all times. But this year, there is no safety net, and you having a really elite player at another position to bail you out. That's what I'm really curious about, because you look at back in 2019, Georgia was in a similar position to where it was now, in the sense they lost their top targets, Mecole Hardman, Calvin Ridley. All those guys left. Or not Calvin, Riley Ridley. All those guys left. In the very next year, in 2019, the offense wasn't the same. Now, it has changed. It's a different system, different coordinator. Kind of similar situation in the sense you're having to replace a lot of your top production, if you know what I mean.
And not so fast, because we played half the season last year without Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers. So they had the ability to solve these problems on the fly last year of how we're going to use these guys. And a lot of the guys that they were leaning on were younger last year, are going to be a little bit more mature and a little bit more developed this year. Lawson Lucky isn't a freshman anymore. He's got plenty of playing time under his belt. Oscar Delp, it's his opportunity to grab the bull by the horns. And there's a lot of other guys that came along through draft class draft class. Guys have just been waiting for their opportunity. When it happened last year, there was a lot of a narrative around from the national media that Brock Bowers being out for Georgia might be a blessing in disguise because it gave him a great opportunity to problem solve and to figure out how this offense is going to work without him, because they were going to lose him. Obviously, if you can have Brock, you want him. But it's a great opportunity. A lot of these guys got pressed into action, lumps, took their lumps and learned how to play. And I think you're going to see the dividends of that this year, specifically with a guy like Oscar Delp. I think Oscar Delp is going to be a really, really good football player for Georgia. I'm not going to say he can do all of the things that Brock Bowers can do, because we know that Brock Bowers was a unicorn, and those don't come along very often. Much in the same way that Kyle Pitts was for Florida, although Kyle Pitts did it for 1 year, guys. And that's the one thing that gets overlooked a lot of times. Kyle Pitts only did it for 1 year. Brock Bowers, the best damn receiver Georgia had for 3 straight years. So, and he scored a lot of touchdowns. Won
a lot of rings too.
Yeah.
Dan, probably one of my favorite segments we do each week. And all right. I got a college football centric one, and on the fly here in the last 30 minutes, I found another one, and I was like, ooh, Dan's going to love this one. I'm going to open it with college football one. I'll let you decide whether or not you want this second one. But I'll focus on the college football one first.
All right.
Dan, you are ranking 6 college football rivalries, 1 to 6, and you don't know which one's coming. Now, I did tell you pre-show, Dan does not know that we were doing. Dan didn't know pre-show that we were doing rivalries. He just knew that, hey, I had a college football one, and I did tell him this, and I'll tell the audience this: there are no dirt balls. These are all really good games that you could probably see in terms of 1 through 6. So, Dan, we're gonna kick it off hot and ready.
All right.
The game: Ohio State and Michigan.
Number 2. It probably should be number 1, but I'm going to go number 2 because I'm hoping that there's this other game.
Actually, I won't do the parentheses. Number 2, Red River rivalry.
5. It's lost its luster to me over the years. It hasn't been much of a rivalry recently.
Number 3, the Iron Bowl.
Who's that?
Bama Auburn.
3.
Ooh.
No, wait, 4.
4?
No, that's 3. That's 3.
I'm curious now.
Hold on, time out. The Iron Bowl's number 1 because people literally kill other people over that shit. I mean, you can go Google it. If you think I'm being over the top, people have literally killed family members over that damn football game. So Iron Bowl's number 1. People kill each other over that game. So that's number 1. I'm sorry. And I mean.
Number 4, the cocktail party.
3.
Number 5, the Egg Bowl.
6.
Ooh. All right. And last but not least, certainly, Florida State, Florida.
4. I'm fine with that.
How we feel about it?
I'm perfectly happy with that. The one game that I thought you were going to give me, and I was going to be very upset because if you gave it to me, it deserved to be number 1, which was Army Navy.
Ooh. Okay.
It's the only game that has its own day.
Standalone weekend.
It's a standalone. The pageantry of it, the significance of it, those kids are playing for much more than a football game. So to me, my number one rivalry over any game in the world would be Army Navy. But with the ones that you gave me, I'm perfectly fine with how it played out.
Now I got a question for you. I
Yeah.
have a second one. And I'm gonna let you pick whether you want it now or you want it later. It is Game of Thrones related.
Oh, let's do it. Why not?
Let's do it. All right. It is
Yeah.
Game of Thrones villains, and I'm gonna pull up the share
Oh,
screen.
here we go.
So I have 5 villains. Dan doesn't know which one's coming next. Dan, first one right off the bat, Joffrey Baratheon.
I hated Joffrey more than anybody in the whole damn. He's not number one. There's not anybody you can say that's going to be higher. I saw this on Twitter earlier today, so it's ruined for you.
Ramsay Bolton.
2.
Damn it. Number 3, Walder Frey.
5.
5?
Yeah.
Probably the least alpha male up here, like complete, utter, like useless.
I mean,
useless person.
He had like the worst murder, but it's just as a villain. I mean,
All right, now here's somebody. Here's my favorite pick, and I'm curious to see where you put him. Sir Kristen Cole.
4. I mean, he doesn't move the needle for me, really.
Doesn't move the needle?
No.
The Master of Tongues does not move the needle, huh? All
No.
right. Number 5, Cersei.
Yeah, 3.
Hey,
that's perfect.
I like your list, sir. I like your list.
That's perfect.
Yeah. I was hoping that Sir Kristen Cole was going to be like your damn it. But in terms of like villainous, Joffrey by far number 1 in my opinion. Ramsay's close. Ramsay's really close. But I can't say that at least for a little bit of Ramsay's storyline did I enjoy seeing him do what he did to Theon, and then kind of towards the end it kind of turned for me.
I didn't enjoy Ramsay at any point.
I enjoyed what he did to Theon.
I didn't. I didn't like Ramsay's character. I didn't like it. I think you could have told the story without him. So
really,
I mean, think about it. If you look at all those people on that list, who's the one person there's 2 people on that list you could tell the story without?
yeah.
I mean, guess you cannot tell the story of Game of Thrones without Joffrey.
Yeah,
can't. But you could tell it without Ramsay. So
you don't get Battle of the Bastards though.
Yeah, I don't care.
I don't care. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that will wrap it up for episode 119 of the Top podcast. 2 blind drafts this week. I was really proud of that second one right there. I was like, Dan wants to talk a little bit Game of Thrones because we talk about it all the time on the phone every Sunday. We have a weekly phone call now.
Mm-hmm.
Averaging about like 10:05, 10:10 right now. So yeah, shout out House of the Dragon. Make sure you go follow the boy Dan Kiley over on Twitter at DanKiley3. Dan, what have you been up to in our month off that I've provided us?
Not a whole lot, man. Just working and driving my kids around. I am a chauffeur.
Hey, while we're here, I'm gonna go ahead and do it. Let's go ahead and do it. Ladies and gentlemen, in the comments, in the live section, wherever you're at, if you're on Twitter, Facebook, whatever, let's wish the man Dan Kiley a happy birthday. Let's go. Let's go, Dan. Happy birthday. Happy early birthday. Next time we see you on Tuesday, you may be literally a year older technically, but you don't look a day older by the time we get there Tuesday. So, Dan, we appreciate you being on the show. You always dedicate your time. He is more dedicated to it than I am sometimes. I will admit that. Dan loves this thing like it is a child of his. So I appreciate him always coming on here. Always a great time, especially in pre-show when Dan's like, hey, you can put me solo because I know it's your favorite thing to do, but don't get lost. So, hey, here's some more solo shots, Dan Kiley. Happy birthday, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
So, anyways, back to it. Make sure you follow Dan Kiley, if nothing more than for his birthday celebration at Dan Kiley. Follow me at Harrison Reno on Twitter as well. Make sure to like, subscribe to the podcast wherever you find your podcast. Like, subscribe to us on YouTube. Rate us 5 stars on the podcast. We'll be back next Tuesday, 7:30. Your most fan interactive Georgia show in the space. We'll see y'all next week.
Go Dogs.